of hers. In the meantime, we've got Foster Friess with us right now, multimillionaire, contemplating a Wyoming run for Senate. We'll see what happens on that front. But Foster, it's interesting that the battle for the soul of the Democratic Party seems to be over how far left you want to push it. They're all going to a man or woman want to raise taxes. The one who wants to raise them the most and have the government spend the most, or get certainly much more active, is Bernie Sanders, and he has a clear shot at this nomination. Republicans are salivating at that. Should they be?
I think they should, because it's easy to teach these young kids in the colleges who've been indoctrinated about socialism. Turning Point USA just did a wonderful expose. They went down to Cuba and they showed what's available to be purchased in the stores. And it's nothing but sacks and sacks of garbanzo beans, or they're called. And then they showed a gas line that lasted about, must have been 5, 6, 7 blocks. People lined up to get gasoline. So I think the fact that Bernie represents this democratic socialism is a real plus. But this might be shocking to you, Neil, but the big money is hoping you're going to jump in with me as your VP. I mean, we can clean up, you know. The Democrats are looking for someone like us. I don't know about
that. You know, it is interesting, though, and you're a good student of history, right, Foster? I'm going to open up to my panel after this, but how many times have we been wrong by consensus? The Carter folks in 1980 who prayed that it would be Ronald Reagan, and they were getting nervous because, George Bush Sr. just won the caucuses, and they figured he'd offer them a much tougher fight. We know that worked out. You know how Republicans in 1960 thought John Kennedy would be easy to beat. He was a young senator, easily beatable. We know how that went. I can go on with Barack Obama. I can go on with so many contests where it was thought, even as recently as 4 years ago, when Democrats hoped and prayed that it would be Donald Trump because he was someone they could squash. Doesn't work out that way. So are Republicans getting ahead of themselves, assuming Bernie Sanders is easily beatable?
Well, I don't think so. And also, if you look at the black vote, that's going to be a big part of it. I'm a little concerned about Joe Biden counting on that in South Carolina, because if you look at the DeSantis race, he won the governorship by 40,000 votes. 100,000 of those votes came from black women because of his believing that they should be empowered for parental choice in the education of children. And with President Trump coming out with that big bill to provide the scholarships or the opportunities for people to go to these schools of their choice, that's going to, again, cut into the big inroads to the black community. And I don't know where Bernie Sanders stands with that community.
Well, he's standing better now with hello, Foster, it's Kennedy, by the way. He's standing much better right now because Joe Biden has seen his support ebb so dramatically in just the last couple of weeks. Now, let's say, I know it's very easy to take shots at Joe Biden because his campaign seems to be on life support, but what if he does well in South Carolina? Does that mean better news for Joe Biden or better news for a brokered convention?
I wouldn't know how to really think about that, frankly, because I think Joe Biden's got some real issues with the scandal in the Ukraine. I don't think people warm up to that. If you're a hardworking plumber or electrician, and that's kind of been his fan base, and blacks, I don't think they like the looks of what is happening over the Ukraine, even though there may be no actual crime, but it just doesn't smell well. So I would say the brokered convention is a possibility, but I'm not the guy to ask that. I'm not a real political guru. I just like to watch and see who to back.
Foster, it's Trish Regan. I mean, you touched on something just now, which I think is pretty remarkable, because the Democrats have had such a hold on the African-American community. And I joke, I grew up as an Irish Catholic in New Hampshire, and you were expected to vote Democrat like you were Irish and like you were a Catholic. And if you were lucky enough, you'd be a union member, too. There was just sort of like an expectation, right, built in. And I think for decades now, the African-American community has really taken hold, or the Democrats have taken hold of the African-American community. That potentially could be turned on its head if you see a Bernie Sanders or a Buttigieg as the Democratic nominee.
Well, you look at what's happening with so many of the black voters. Charlie Kirk at Turning Point USA has hired a fellow, and he told me at a meeting recently, I'm a black police officer, and when President Obama kept bashing law enforcement, that was enough for me. I'm out of here. And he's now a staunch, not a Republican, but a Charlie Kirk backer, who's kind of the patriots of the Republican Party. I'm just very excited about what President Trump has done for the black community, not only in the issuing them opportunities for educational freedom, but just the employment rate and the criminal justice reform. Those are very, very big deals. And people think that the black vote is kind of just standing in line and can't think for themselves, and they'll vote Democratic because that's what they've always done. I don't believe that. I think they're very tuned in to the opportunity to choose the right schools and to have criminal justice reform, which has been so abusive. So I'm very, very excited about what Donald Trump's going to do, regardless of what happens with the Sanders, Warren, and
yeah. Well,
you
might be right. I mean, you capture 10% more of that vote than you got last time. You could make up for some of the problems that is the Trump campaign might have with the college-educated women, et cetera. So that could change things mightily. But let me ask you, as a Wall Street guy too, that I've always said the financial community has been shrugging off all of these Democratic candidates, thinking not a one of them can win in this environment where the economy is so strong, markets are so strong. What do you think of that? That even the prospect of Bernie Sanders getting nominated doesn't scare them because they figure there's no way he can win. It's like another McGovern in '72, popular with the base, but blown out in the general election. What do you think of that?
Well, Neil, you put your finger right on it, because these are the expectations, and any time the expectations are shattered, if Sanders were to get nominated, I think you'd huge exposure to the market, and because psychologically nobody wants to have a system where a small elite and a faraway capital controls the behavior of the rest of us. Ronald Reagan warned us about that a long time ago, and he wants we the people to decide how our lives are led, not by a small group in Washington, D.C. So it would be a catastrophic event, and Wall Street would be shocked, certainly, if Bernie Sanders were to get that nominee. But I think I want to mention one thing you touched about, the women for Trump. I don't know if people realize what he's doing in Muslim countries to empower women. I had lunch with Ivanka Trump in Houston about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and it's unbelievable the steps they're making to improve the lives of women in Muslim countries. One woman said, I used to have to get my husband's signature to be able to travel. And there's a lot of great things happening there, which wants the
now he just
women.
has to make that magic work for women here. And maybe he will. Maybe he will. Always good seeing you, my friend. Buster Freeze. We have billionaire investor John Paul DeJour